The next segment is the keynote speech. May I now invite the chairperson, Dr. Kumudini Jayasinghe and Dr. Ganakasena Ratna to introduce the speakers. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good morning, all of you. I am Ganakasena Ratna. With me, I have Dr. Kumudini Jayasinghe. We both welcome all of you for this very special segment. That is the keynote speech of the 7th Annual Congress, SIMCON 2023. Kumudini?
Thank you. We have an eminent speaker today, one of the senior most clinicians to deliver the keynote address. And I have honor and pleasure of inviting Dr. Sarath Gamini Silva, senior consultant physician, to deliver the keynote address on physicians' burnout. Over to you, Dr. Sarath Gamini Silva.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Chairperson, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a situation that is becoming more frequent now with all the problems the clinicians are undergoing in the day-to-day delivery of their duties. Now, this goes as physician well-being versus burnout and compassion fatigue. I would be doing it from back forwards in the sense, I'll first discuss what causes burnout so that we can find solutions to maintain physicians' well-being. Now, what is burnout? Now, that is a term coined by one American psychologist by the name of Herbert Freudenberger in early 1970s. However, this aspect has been recognized by people several decades before that. Now, Freudenberger defined consequences of prolonged stress and anxiety experienced by people working in healing professions. That was his definition of burnout. But later, Maslach et al. Defined it as an emotional and passive reaction to chronic job stress, the core of which is the gradual depletion of one's internal energy, resources, including emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, that's a sense of distancing, feeling negative towards or cynical towards a job, and of course, a reduced sense of professional accomplishment. Having done the job, you feel that you haven't done a good job, which is primarily driven by workplace stressors. Thus, burnout is a state of mental fatigue resulting from a person's professional life. Now, professional burnout, emotional exhaustion, and loss of satisfaction with patient care affects doctors at every stage in their careers, from PG trainees to certified specialists. It no doubt affects the quality of patient care with increase in medical errors and lower patient satisfaction. It can affect any professionals, any type of professionals, especially those engaged in people-oriented professions like teachers, emergency service providers as well. That is because unlike a person who is working at the desk in an office, who can plan things out on his own way. Here you are dealing with people, and there are so many stresses in your attempts to satisfy the people you are serving. Healthcare workers are more prone, due to the nature of their work, involving empathy, compassion, and understanding, that the work one does has direct implications on the immediate well-being of the patient and his family. High expectations of the people of a fault-free service of the physician are a source of much emotional burden on the caregiver. Naturally, the front-line healthcare workers, like those in family medicine, general internal medicine, and emergency physicians, are more subjected to burnout. Now, there is a significant prevalence among surgeons, anesthetists as well, due to the nature of their work. Now, tendency to burnout is aggravated by knowing the best approach to a given situation, but not being provided with the essential facilities to achieve that. Apart from an extreme workload, this is often the cause in resource-poor settings like ours. We know what to do, but we are not provided with the wherewithal to do the best that you know you can do. Now, WHO ICD-11 classifies it as an occupational phenomenon. That shows how vague it is. Now, what are the leading causes? Now, Copenhagen Burnout Inventory, that's a scheme to find out the causes, comprises 3 scales. Personal burnout scale, generated to evaluate the level of burnout in people, irrespective of their occupational status. So, for personal reasons, not depending on the workload, they can get burnt out. We'll discuss that in detail later. Then work-related burnout scale, whether the person is distributing his burnout to his work. And client-related burnout scale. This can also be called compassion fatigue, whether his problem is related to his clients, either patients or maybe students in a teaching situation. In 2019, among 245 postgraduate doctors in Colombo, by one Fernando and Samaranayaka, found the incidence of burnout as personal burnout in 42%, work-related burnout in 32%, and client-related burnout in 9%. Now, the concept of burnout came to prominence during the COVID pandemic. Obviously, everyone was overworked. During the pandemic, the burnout rates in frontline healthcare workers had increased exponentially, 60 to 70% in one study. Now, a meta-analysis published in 2023 in 30 studies during that pandemic showed that there were so many causes that increased the incidence of burnout among physicians. Now, there were stories of deaths of frontline healthcare workers with COVID. There's a lack of personal protection equipment and fear of taking the infection home that was very high. Poor infection control due to overcrowding. Increased need for childcare due to being away from home. And anxiety about children missing school. You are working in the hospital, but you are wondering what's happening at home. Anxiety about children missing school, lack of adequate information and communication. You didn't know what was happening. There were so many rumors, how so many died, how many healthcare workers died. So there was no definite information, at least in the early stages. Now, this was related to anxiety, sense of helplessness, fear of death, and inability to lead a normal life among the general population as well. Now, causes of burnout could be individual or organizational. Now, individual factors are to be perfect and expect others to be perfect in the way they do things it is a common trait among doctors. That is what we expect to be the ideal situation. High idealistic expectation, perfectionism, trying to be perfect, strong need for recognition, always waiting to please other people and in the process suppressing their own needs, feeling irreplaceable, that there's no one else to do your job, you have to do it. Overestimation of one's ability to deal with challenges. You think you have to attempt and deal with every challenge. Overly self-critical of performance. Work is only meaningful activity, you think, and work as a substitute for social life. So if you have these traits, which are supposed to be common among doctors, then you are more prone to develop burnout. By their very nature, all these traits have a high risk of disappointment. When such high ideals are not met, there's a risk of unprofessional behavior and eventual burnout. Of course, if one is not conscientious about the work he does, then if he does it as a job, not as a profession, if he doesn't understand the importance of the work you do, obviously you won't get burnt out. That is one way of preventing burnout. I don't recommend that though. Then they find that female postgraduate trainees in one study were found to be more prone to burnout. High emotional burden, having to look after household chores, need to look after the children's education and their general well-being, being mainly responsible for orderly management of the household. So in addition to what the males undergo, the females have another load of emotional burden. Right. Now what are the, what are the organizational factors that contribute to burnout? Now, complexity of the workplace, hectic, chaotic, inefficient, that's a common thing that we see in most places. Up to 50% of time spent with clerical work. Now, I suppose this doesn't apply to us. I'll deal with that later. In more developed countries, they find that up to 50% is in front of a computer, not with the patient. That has caused a lot of burnout among doctors. Now, no encouragement to maintain a work-life balance. I mean, your employer would expect you to do the job till late at night, even come back early in the morning. There is no consideration given for your social life or your obligations to the family. And there is no chance to practice what they preach. We tell the patients on a daily basis about lifestyle management and all that, but you don't have time or even to think about such things yourself. Imagine walking into an understaffed and overcrowded ward with flow cases. Staff shortage is there, aggravated by the brain drain, and overworked staff not in a position to help with caring for patients. Then there is a shortage of drugs that you know will help the patient recovery. I don't have to elaborate on that. The shortage of resources for meaningful research that one has been trained to undertake. In a busy general ward, unless you are really keen, unless you are really committed, you'd rather forget about research and do the caring of the patient only. These are all so frustrating. Can you help me, please? Right, okay. Now, sorry, thank you. In the study I quoted above, that is by Fernando and Senanayaka. Client-related factors identified. I said this can be called compassion fatigue. You are going to do a job with compassion, but you find that you fail in that duty and there is fatigue due to that. Now, these are discharging patients not fully cured to release beds for new admissions, then ordering more tests or radiology because you had no time to clinically evaluate properly, didn't respond adequately to queries of patients or relations, or didn't explain the illness or treatment to the patient, didn't treat pain on time the patient was suffering, and didn't hand over patient properly when going off duty. So you understand, if you are doing a proper job, all those things have to be done. And if you find yourself without adequate time to all that, then you are a disappointed person at the end of it. Now, having discussed the situations that lead to burnout, let's see Can you help me with this? It gets stuck. Excuse me. It has gone. Excuse me. Can you help me with this, please? I'm wasting time. Right. Okay. I'll leave it alone. Can I go to slide number 11? No. So let me go on to features of burnout until the slides come on. There are lots of motivation. Then feeling helpless, trapped or defeated. You are stuck in this situation where you want to work, but you don't have the facilities. So there are so many other factors. And then detachment. You start working like a machine. Which slide do you want to go? Further up. Yes, correct. Yeah, okay. Then you are detached, working like a machine, not as a person attending to human beings. Then the negative outlook is there. You feel nothing will work for you, and what you are doing may not produce the results. Then that is a decreased sense of satisfaction or sense of accomplishment, and reduced professional efficiency. That's also a feature because of the burnout. Feeling tired and drained most of the time, and tiredness is not responding to adequate rest. You go home tired in the evening, and in the morning, next morning also, you still feel tired, and your rest at night has not corrected itself. So they could result in anxiety, sleep disturbance, and depression. There have been, in other countries, there have been suicide, quite a significant incidence of suicides among doctors. Now, it is a Sri Lankan culture that has given prominence to the medical profession as the preeminent occupation in the society. From small days, we have been imbibed with the idea that becoming a doctor is the best one can achieve in life. The parents, both medical and non-medical, would wish their children to become doctors. This was certainly true when those of my age were growing up, when the choice of fields of study was very limited. But it is not very different even today, when avenues for educational advancement are so vast. The fact that doctors are respected in society, irrespective of one's reputation as good or bad, the notion that doctors are omnipotent, solving problems the laymen do not understand, the presumed ability to accumulate a fortune over the years, high value in the marriage market, in one is not already captured by the opposite sex early on, the belief that one is above the laws of the land and can escape even breaking laws like traffic laws. These are factors that make one persevere to become a doctor. Long hours spent getting ready for examinations, to come out on top to enter the medical school, in the process sacrificing many other more pleasurable activities of late childhood and early adult life, are tolerated purely for ensuring a secure future. Intensive studying as a medical student and intensive training during postgraduate studies to specialize is sapping so much energy that one should surely be fatigued in the end. Unforeseen delays beyond your control at every stage, wasting so much time in achieving your aims, must certainly make one frustrated throughout. Delayed marriage and bringing up children late is another problem. The stress and uncertainty of finding a training center abroad, followed by stress of adjustment to a new culture and work ethic, are issues that matter. Having survived all that, a qualified physician naturally expects to be treated with respect by everyone on return. However, the harassment the specialists undergo at every turn on return from overseas training is quite disturbing. Administrators appear to be sadistic at times in ensuring that married couples are kept hundreds of miles apart, posted into remote places with no facilities for accommodation or transport, with no consideration for children's education. Yes, certainly, one may argue that all areas in the country should be served. But what has those in administration done to improve facilities in the periphery to make them habitable? I have laid down the foregoing facts to show that all the ingredients for frustration and eventual burnout exist already even before a physician starts serious work. One should have peace of mind and at least the basic physical comforts to concentrate on the energy-sapping work dealing with human lives that awaits him. In more developed countries, as I said earlier, a significant proportion, as much as 50% of working hours spent away from patient doing electronic medical record, the EMR keeping, seems to be a major cause for physician burnout. Although this was meant to improve the practice of medicine to be more efficient, it has actually created more barriers between doctor and the patient, resulting in an enormous amount of extra paperwork. This, of course, may not be an issue in our country. However, resulting lack of easy access to past medical records makes it less efficient and prone to mistakes in diagnosis and treatment, in turn contributing to frustration and burnout. In my time, I had my own ways of tackling the near impossible situations. I did not start the ward round till 9 a.m., although arriving in the hospital around 8 a.m. Thus, the first hour of the day I spent chatting to my colleagues in the consultants' lounge, talking politics and discussing the news of the day. Thus, having relaxed after the hassle of negotiating the traffic, I walk into the ward. A 5-minute chat with the ward sister and the doctors put me in a proper frame of mind to start serious work. After seeing the bad cases in the ward, I used to go through the flow cases first and discharge all patients not needing in-ward treatment. Relieved that I have reduced the burden, I could proceed to see the rest, learning from the SR, the registrar, etc., those needing urgent attention. I used to cover the male and female wards every other day, entrusting the SR to look after the other ward and inform me those needing my attention at the end. I must admit that I have no experience in working as a consultant in hospitals other than general hospitals, the smallest being General Hospital Mater. I know the trials and tribulations of those working in more peripheral hospitals. I have been privileged to serve the greater part of my career, 25 years in the teaching hospitals, 11 years at Karapitiya, and 14 long years at the NHS. 15 or 20 medical students waiting for my teaching was a constant feature. I did not expect the entire group to follow me from bed to bed during the ward round. That would have added to my stress, and also the student could have had a nice time being spoon-fed, listening to me without actually learning in depth from the few patients allocated to each of them. Each one had to stand near the patients allocated to him, and I asked one or two probing questions on the patient. Of course, almost daily, I took a 45-minute class around 11 a.m. I was relatively at peace when I had my lunch at around 12:30 p.m. I hardly ever delayed my meals for whatever reason. Of course, such planned activity may not be possible for in many categories of doctors, like those involved in theater work or handling emergencies. Especially in larger hospitals, you may consider it a blessing to have a team of doctors of all categories available to share the work. At the same time, knowing that they are all waiting with eager, wide-open eyes to learn from you could be an added source of stress to the physician. A bunch of medical students too could be similar unless one enjoys teaching after a heavy ward round. Of course, imparting your knowledge and skills to the juniors is an integral part of medical practice. But one should always find ways of rationalizing the work schedule wherever possible. With many doctors migrating overseas, resulting in many shortages in a system with little attempts at rational distribution of human and material resources, burnout of frustrated doctors and other healthcare workers is necessarily rampant. The patient, whose welfare is our primary and ultimate responsibility, is the loser at the end. I feel private consultation practice after 4 p.m. rather than the daytime hospital work is the main contributor to physician burnout in our country. An unlimited number of patients in a long queue, each getting only 3 to 5 minutes for a consultation, going on till late at night, in many cases, is the bane of many successful physicians. Apart from a big packet of money, is my time up? Oh dear. 20, 25. Sorry. Well, I must quickly go through the remedies. Start early in one's career. Make the medical students and young doctors constantly aware from the very beginning of the rewarding nature of the medical profession. At the same time, understand that medicine is an imperfect science and its practice is an art where one can make unintended mistakes. Impart knowledge of what professionalism is, understanding what makes a good doctor, striving to achieve sense of value and purpose, recognize good medical behavior and install commendation system, identify early lapses in professionalism that could lead to burnout, provide early support, and be aware of early signs. Interventions, main thing for the physician is to practice what you preach, that practice a lifestyle medicine, mindfulness training, meditation, then regular meal times, avoid binge eating, undertake physical activity, talk to your family, spend time for reading, listening to music, adequate sleep. And of course, organization, I don't want to go into details, you know exactly what they should do, giving you more facilities. So I'm sorry I had rushed through this. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarath Gamini, for sharing your wisdom as a senior clinician and giving us insightful analysis of our day-to-day life. Let's show our appreciation in our usual way for his presentation. May I invite President Dr. Kumudini Jayasinghe to hand over the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Sarath Gamini Silva.
Thank you very much, everyone.